So बच्चा लोग, in this first question there are two capacitors which are connected in parallel, CC, and the combination is connected in series with another identical combination. So it is connected with two parallel capacitors like this in series. You have to calculate the uh, overall capacitance, equivalent capacitance. So first you will realize that C and C in series, C and C in parallel will just become 2C and 2C. And then what you need to realize is that both of them in series will tell us the C equivalent. What will be the C equivalent, beta? It will be 1 by 2C plus 1 by 2C. That will just be 1 by C. So option A will be the correct answer. In this question, my dear bacha log, you have to understand that this C3 is connected to point B on both sides. So essentially beta, this point will be point B, this point will also be point B, and this point will also be point B. So C is connecting between B and B. So potential difference across C3 will be equal to 0. V will be equal to 0. So for C3, my dear bacha log, charge will also be equal to 0. So if charge on a capacitor is 0, potential difference on a capacitor is 0 beta, you can just remove that capacitor. You can just remove that capacitor. And in that case, my dear bacha log, I can redraw the circuit like this. C1 and C2. So equivalent capacitance will just be equal to C1 plus C2. That will just be 2C. Option D will be the correct answer. In this question, my dear bacha log, we have to obtain 3 microfarad equivalent by using 3 capacitors of 2 microfarad. Now options A, B, C and D are given beta. The easiest way to solve such a question is by making the circuits given in all the options and then seeing whether they give us the correct answer or not. Option A gives us a circuit like this, 2, 2, 2. Option B gives us a circuit like this. Option C gives us a circuit like this. This is, by the way, also 2, 2, 2. Option C gives us a circuit like this. And you can also similarly make the circuit for option D. Now one by one, let's check what is the equivalent capacitance in each case. So for option A beta, what you will say is that 1 by C equivalent is equal to 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 2. That will be 3 by 2. So here C equivalent will just be equal to 2 by 3, which is not a 3. So option A cannot be the correct answer. For option B beta, C equivalent will just be 2 plus 2 plus 2. That will just be 6, which is not a 3. So it is not the correct answer. For option C beta, what you will do is first you will simplify this 2 and 2 in parallel. That 2 and 2 in series beta. That will just become 1 microfarad. That will just become 1 microfarad. And then, my dear bacha log, you can calculate the equivalent. That will come out as 3 microfarad. If you see, that is in this option C, C equivalent is equal to 3 microfarad. So that will be the correct answer. You can check for option D now beta. You don't need to, because option C will be the answer. But you can check for option D and you will realize, my dear bacha log, that even for option D, the equivalent capacitance will not be 3. Okay, I will not do the calculation beta, but you can do it on your own. And you will get here C equivalent as 4 by 3 microfarads. Okay, so you will realize that option D is also incorrect. Option C will be the correct answer. In this question beta, there is a parallel plate capacitor is made by stacking n equally spaced plates and connected alternatively. If the capacitance is between any two adjacent plates is C, then we have to calculate the resultant capacitance. Now beta, here rather than stacking n plates, now what I will do is I will choose a random number and see what the answer will be for that many plates. So for example, let's take n is equal to 5 as an example value and see what answer we get. Based on the answer that we get beta, we will be able to click on the correct option. So beta, essentially there are 5 plates kept like this. And my dear bacha log, they are also connected alternatively. So the first, the third and the fifth plate is connected. The second and the fourth plate is connected. Let's call it A, let's call it B. Now my dear bacha log, there are 4 capacitances C, C, C and C. And I need to find out the equivalent capacitance. For that beta, first of all, let's name the plates properly, A, and this will be B and B. And let's redraw the circuit diagram. Between A and B beta, I have a capacitance C, so I will draw capacitance C between A and B. Between A and B, I have another capacitance C, so I will draw another capacitance C right here. Between A and B, I have another capacitance C, so I will draw another capacitance C here and the fourth capacitance C here as well. Now beta, if you see, they are all in parallel and you will realize C equivalent is 4C, which you can just write as 5 minus 1C. If you see, my dear bacha log, only option A is matching our answer. So option A will be correct. In this question, my dear bacho, 4 capacitors of equal capacitance have equivalent capacitance C1 when connected in series. So when we connect the capacitors in series, my dear bacha log, the equivalent capacitance is C1. I will write down 1 by C1 is 1 by C plus 1 by C plus 1 by C plus 1 by C, which gives me C1 is equal to C by 4. Now when the same capacitors are connected in parallel, my dear bacho, same capacitors connected in parallel, now the equivalent capacitance is C2. C2 will just be C plus C plus C plus C, that will just be 4C. You have to calculate the ratio C1 by C2. That will just be C by 4 upon 4C, that will be 1 by 16. So option B will be the correct answer. Next, my dear bacha log, in this question, n identical capacitors, each of capacitance C, when connected in parallel give capacitance of 90 microfarad and when connected in series give capacitance of 2.5 microfarads. We have to find the value of n and C respectively. So my dear bacha log, when I connect the capacitors in parallel, 1, 2, ... how many capacitors beta? We are connecting n capacitors in parallel. Okay, then in that case, my dear bacha log, the equivalent capacitance will just be C plus C plus C ... n times. So I will write down 90 microfarads is equal to n times C. This is the first equation. Please remember that equation. Next, when we connect all the capacitors in series, Okay, here my dear bachcha log, I can write the equivalent capacitance as 1 by C plus 1 by C plus 1 by C, or I can write down 1 by 2.5 microfarads is equal to N by C, which gives me 2.5 microfarads is equal to C by N. This is the second equation beta. Now if we solve both of these equations, we will be able to answer this question. So what I will say is that 90 NC is equal to 90 microfarads and C by N is equal to 2.5 microfarads. Let's divide the two equations, my dear bachcha log. 1 divided by 2. I will get NC upon C by N is equal to 90 divided by 2.5. Now beta, that gives me N square is equal to 9 into 25. 90 divided, 90 divided by 25. It's divided by 25. Oh my god. Okay, N square is equal to, when I divide the two, correct. Oh, okay. N square is equal to 90 divided by 2.5. Or I can write it as 900 divided by 25, or I can write it as 36. So N, my dear bachcha log, will just be 6. And my dear bachcha log, I can write out N into C is equal to 90 microfarads. So I will write down 6 into C is equal to 90 microfarads, which gives me C is equal to 15 microfarads. So N will be 6 and C will be 15 microfarads. Option A will be the correct answer. Okay. Next, my dear bachcha log, here 4 capacitors are connected in a circuit as shown in the figure. We have to calculate the effective capacitance in microfarad between the 2 points A and B. Now here beta, what I will do is I will redraw the circuit after naming the points. This point will also be A, this point will also be A, this point will also be A, because all of these points beta are directly connected to the point A without any element in between. There is no capacitor, no resistor in between. So all of them will be named A. This will be point B and this will also be point B. Now this point beta can neither be A or B because there is a capacitor in whichever direction we go. We are not directly connected to A or B. So I will name this point as D. And then I will redraw the circuit A, D and B. You will realize beta, there is a 2 microfarad capacitor between A and D. I will draw a 2 microfarad capacitor between A and D. There is another 2 microfarad capacitor between A and D beta. I will draw a 2 microfarad capacitor between A and D. There is a 2 microfarad capacitor between B and D beta. I will draw a 2 microfarad capacitor between B and D. And beta, there is 2 microfarad capacitor between A and B. So I will draw a 2 microfarad capacitor between A and B. Now beta, you just have to simplify this circuit a little bit. This 2 and 2 are in parallel beta, they will become 4. So I will have 4 microfarads, 2 microfarads and 2 microfarads like this. And beta, this 4 and 2 are in series, they will become 4 by 3 microfarads. I hope you guys know how to do that calculation. 4 by 3 microfarads and 2 microfarads. So the equivalent capacitance at the end of the day, my dear bachcha log, the equivalent capacitance will be 4 by 3 plus 2. That will be 10 by 3 microfarads. That will be none of the options given here, my dear bachcho. So here I don't know what the answer will be, but I think it should be none of these. Next, in this question, my dear bacha log, each capacitor has a capacitance C. We have to calculate the equivalent capacitance between P and R and the equivalent capacitance between P and Q, and then take their ratio. So beta, when I calculate the equivalent capacitance between PQ, I will draw P on one side. Sorry, let's first calculate PR. I will draw P on one side and R on the other side. Now if you see beta, between P and R, these three capacitors are connected in series. So I will draw three capacitors in series. And then these two capacitors are also in series. So I will draw these two capacitors in series. C, 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 C. Now beta, that can be simplified into this. C by 3 and C by 2. So the equivalent capacitance between P and R beta will be C by 2 plus C by 3. That will be 5C by 6. Very good, my dear bacha log. Now next, let's calculate the equivalent capacitance between P and Q. Now beta, if I draw the circuit for P and Q, okay, I will draw P on one side and Q on the other side. Now in this case beta, if you see, I have 4 capacitance in series between P and Q, and then one more capacitor here. So I will draw first 4 capacitors in series like this, and then one capacitor in parallel. C, 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 C and C. Now beta, this can be simplified to C by 4 and C. Which gives me beta CPQ is equal to C plus C by 4, that is 5C by 4. Now if I take the ratio between the two, my dear bacha log, CPR divided by CPQ, that will be 5C by 6 upon 5C by 4. That, my dear bacha log, will just become 2 by 3, which is option C. That would be the correct answer for this question. Next, in this case, my dear bacha log, if you just redraw the circuit a little bit, my dear bacha log, let me rename the points, okay, then it will be very clear. See, if this point is A beta, this point will also be A. If this point is B, this point will also be B. Let's call this point as D, and let's call this point as E. Okay, let's forget about the C and A. I don't know what they are. Now beta, if you redraw the circuit by keeping A and B here, A on one side, B on the other side, and put D and E on a vertical line, you will realize that this is nothing but a Wheatstone bridge. Beta, between A and E we have a capacitor C1. So I will write down capacitor C1 here. Between A and D we have capacitor C4. So I will make capacitor C4 here. Between B and D we have capacitor C3. So I will make capacitor C3 here. And between B and E we have C5. I will make C5 here. And finally beta, we have C2 between D and E. This is clearly a Wheatstone bridge, which if you see is also balanced, because all these are 4 4 4 4. So it's a balanced Wheatstone bridge. What I can do is I can remove the bridge resistor beta, which will make the circuit like this: one capacitor, another capacitor, one capacitor, another capacitor, and this 4 4 4 4. Now beta, the 4 and 4 are in series, so we can simplify that. It will become 2 and 2, which gives me beta C equivalent as 2 plus 2, that is equal to 4 microfarads. So option C will be the correct answer. Next my dear bachcha log is this question. Alright, this is a very good question my dear bachcha log, and there is a lot to learn from this question. So first of all beta, you have 8 millifarad capacitors, and you have to form a 16 millifarad equivalent capacitance from that. Now your first choice would be to just add one 8 millifarad like this and another 8 millifarad like this, and you can say that, array sir, the overall C equivalent will be 16 millifarad, so you only need 2 capacitors. But that would be wrong my dear bachcha log, this is very wrong. See, what you have to understand my dear bachcho is that the rating of this capacitor is 250 volt. Essentially beta, this setup will only work if the potential difference across the capacitor is 250 volts or less than that. If the potential difference across the capacitor is more than that beta, they will not work, the capacitors will break down. Now we want to make a composite which has a voltage rating of 1000. Essentially we have to create a situation where if we connect the composite with a 1000 volt battery, it should not break. Now in this case beta, it will clearly break, because when connecting to a 1000 volt battery like this, potential difference across both the capacitor will be 1000 and 1000 volts. Both the capacitors will break down beta, and our composite will not work. So this is wrong. So what can we do beta? How can we just use this capacitor to get the limit up to 1000 volt beta? What we can do is we can start connecting capacitors in series first. If I connect capacitors in series, then they will divide the potential difference. For example my dear bachcho, if I connect 4 capacitors in a series, each of them having the capacitance 8 millifarad, 8 millifarad, 8 millifarad and 8 millifarad. If I connect them in series my dear bachalo with a battery of a potential 1000 volts, then the overall 1000 volts in this case beta will be divided, and each of them will only get 250 volts potential. Now in this case beta, the problem is that if you calculate the C equivalent, it will just be 1 by 8 plus 1 by 8 plus 1 by 8 plus 1 by 8. That will just be 2 millifarads. The thing is, we need a composite which has an equivalent capacitance of 16 millifarads. But now beta, with this starting point, we can very well achieve that 16 millifarad capacity. What I will do is beta, I will just make a parallel combination of this. If I connect in parallel with each other, I can increase the capacitance. So essentially my dear bachcha log, we can connect a combination like this. I will have 4 capacitors in series which has an equivalent capacitance of 2 millifarads and which can withstand 1000 volts. Okay, I will connect 8 of those in parallel. So essentially I will have to do the same thing here 8 times. Now if I connect all of them, my dear bacha log, to a battery of 1000 volts, what you have to realize is that in that case each capacitor will only get a potential difference of 250 volts, which is the maximum allowed potential difference, and in this case the equivalent capacitance will just be 2 millifarads into 8, that will be 16 millifarads. So this is the combination that I need to make. And for this beta, how many capacitors do we need? The number of capacitors that we need for this is 4 capacitors in each row multiplied by 8 rows. So overall we need 32 capacitors. So answer, my dear bacha log, will be 32. I hope you guys understand. Next is this question. I have to calculate the equivalent capacitance here, my dear bacho, between A and B. The best way to start here, bacha log, is by naming the points. If you see, this point will also be A, this point will be B, this point will also be B, this point beta, let's call it D. Now I will redraw the circuit. A will be here, B will be here, and D will be somewhere in between. All the capacitors beta are 9 microfarads. So beta, there will be a capacitor C1 between B and D. I will draw that capacitor 9 microfarads. There will be a capacitor C2 between A and D. I will draw that capacitor 9 microfarads. There is a capacitor C3 beta between B and D. I will draw that capacitor 9 microfarads. And there is a capacitor C4 beta between A and B. I will draw that capacitor 9 microfarads. Now my dear bacha log, we just need to simplify this. Now first of all, this 9 and 9 are in parallel, they will become 18. So I will have a 9 here, 18 here, and 9 in parallel. This 9 and 18, my dear bacha log, are in a series and they will become 6. I hope you guys will do all the small calculations. It will be 1 by 9 plus 1 by 18, that will be 3 by 18, that will be 1 by 6. So overall it will become 6. Please do the small calculations on your own. This will be 6 and this will be 9. So overall, my dear bacha log, the equivalent capacitance will just be equal to 6 plus 9, that is 15 microfarad. So option A will be the correct answer. I hope everybody understood. Next, my dear bacha log, is this question. In this, 4 capacitors are joined as shown in the figure. Each has a capacity of 8 microfarads. We have to calculate the equivalent capacitance. Now in such cases beta, we will just have to name the points and redraw the circuit. This point will be A, this point will also be A, this point will also be A, this point will also be A, and this point will also be A. All of these points beta are directly connected to A without any other points in between. By the way, this will also be A. Any other points in between. So all of them can be named as A. And similarly, my dear bacha log, this point can be named as B. This point can also be named as B. This point can also be named as B. And this point can also be named as B. All of these points are directly connected to B without any other element in between. So now when you redraw the circuit beta, you only need 2 points A and B. And if you see, there will be a capacitor between A and B. I will draw a capacitor between A and B. There is another, by the way, 8 microfarads. There is another capacitor between A and B. I will draw another capacitor between A and B, 8 microfarads. Another capacitor between A and B. Another capacitor between A and B, 8 microfarads. One last capacitor between A and B. One last capacitor between A and B, 8 microfarads. The equivalent capacitance beta will be 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8. That will be beta 4 into 8, 32 microfarads. Option A will be the correct answer. I hope everybody understands. Next is this question beta. In this question, we can clearly see that we have a Wheatstone bridge on our hands. Now, first of all, in order to get to that Wheatstone bridge, we need to calculate the equivalent of these two. That will be nothing but 5 microfarad beta. I will just write down 1 by 10 plus 1 by 10. That will just be 2 by 10 or 1 by 5. So equivalent of those two will be 5 microfarads. Equivalent of these two, my dear bacha log, will be 3 microfarads, because 1 by 6 plus 1 by 6 once again will just be 2 by 6. That is 1 by 3. 3 microfarads. So when I redraw the circuit, I will draw A and then 5 microfarads and then 3 microfarads, something like this. Okay, now beta, clearly this is a Wheatstone bridge in which the bridge resistance can be removed. A bridge capacitor can be removed. So beta, I will just do that. I will remove that bridge capacitor. Hai. So let me just remove that 7 microfarad from there. I can't remove it right now. Just imagine that I removed it. Okay, let's forget about it. So my dear bacha log, what I will get is the remaining one, A 5 3 and another 5 3. Because it's a balanced Wheatstone bridge, I can remove that bridge capacitance. Now beta, the equivalent of 5 and 3 will be 1 by 5 plus 1 by 3. That will just be equal to 8 by 15. So equivalent of 5 and 3 beta will be 15 by 8. I will draw that. A 15 by 8 and 15 by 8. Okay. B. What will be the equivalent capacitance? That will be 2 multiplied by, that will just be 15 by 8 plus 15 by 8. That will be 15 by 4. That will be 3.75. Okay, so option A will be the correct answer. Now here, my dear bachalo, we are supposed to calculate the equivalent capacitance between A and B. Once again, the best way to approach that, my dear bachalo, is by naming all the points. This point will also be A, this point will also be A, this point will be B. Now this point beta will neither be A or B, so let's call it D. This will also be D, this will also be D. Now I will redraw the circuit with A on one side and B on the other side, D somewhere in between. Now when I redraw, my dear bacha, look, first of all, this C1 is directly between A and D. So I will draw 1 microfarad like this. Then beta, this C2 and C3 are in series and they are in between A and D. So I will draw 2 and 2 like this. They are in series and between A and D, C2, C3. And beta, then this 4 microfarad is between A and D, B and D. So I will draw 4 microfarad like this. Now it's just the point of simplifying this. This will first become beta 1 and another 1, and then we will have a 4. And then beta, that will just become 2 and 4. So the equivalent capacitance, my dear bacha log, will just be 4 by 3. I will write on 1 by C equivalent as 1 by 2 plus 1 by 4. That will be 3 by 4, which gives me C equivalent as 4 by 3, which is option, I think option A, I'm not sure. There is a little bit of intersection between the options there, but it feels like option A. Next my dear bachcha log is this question. If the three capacitors of capacitance C1, C2, C3 are connected in parallel, then their equivalent capacitance C parallel is greater than C series. Beta, in this case, remember that in a case of a parallel capacitance, in such cases beta, it would be nice if you take example values according to the question. Now just take some example values. I will take C1 as 1, C2 as 2 and C3 as 3. Now when I connect them in a series, my dear bacha logo, what I will get is 1 by C equivalent as 1 by 1 plus 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3. That will be equal to 6 plus 3 plus 2 by 6. That will be equal to 11 by 6. So I will get in this case C equivalent as 6 by 11 for a series. And for parallel, my dear bacha log, the C equivalent will just be equal to 1 plus 2 plus 3, that is equal to 6 microfarads. So what you need to realize from this, my dear bacha log, that C parallel is definitely bigger than C series, and this will always be true no matter which example you take. So assertion is true, bacho. The reason, however, is false. Remember that C parallel is actually equal to C1 plus C2 plus C3. So here option C will be the correct answer. Assertion is true, but reason is false. In this question, two condensers of same capacity are connected first in series and then in parallel. First in parallel and then in series. The ratio of resultant capacities is 4:1. In parallel, the capacity increases, in series, the capacity decreases. So here beta, when you connect them in a series, and when you connect them, first you have to connect them in parallel, sorry. So when you connect them in parallel beta, the equivalent capacitance will just be C plus C, that will be 2C. When you connect them in series, my dear bacha logo, the equivalent capacitance will just be 1 by C plus 1 by C, that is 2 by C. So equivalent capacitance will just be C by 2. So what will be the ratio C parallel is to C series? That will be 2C is to C by 2. That will just be beta 4:1. So assertion is true. Of course it is true. Beta, the reason is also true. In parallel, the capacity increases, in series, the capacity decreases. But here, the reason is not very well explaining the assertion, right? Because it doesn't say that we have to add and do normal addition here and reciprocal addition here. That's not being said in the reason. So it does not correctly explain the assertion, and option B will be the correct answer. Okay. Next, my dear bacha log, here three capacitors 8, 8 and 4 are connected in parallel across a potential difference of 120 volts. The total charge on the effective capacitor will be what? So beta, I will connect 3 capacitor 8, 8 and 4 in parallel to what battery beta? To a 120 volt battery. 8, 8 and 4. 120 volts battery. So what will be the equivalent capacitance? That will just be 8 plus 8 plus 4. That will just be 20 microfarads. And what will be the charge? That will just be C equivalent into V. The overall charge beta distributed, the total charge distributed across all three capacitors. That will just be equal to, my dear bacha log, 20 microfarads into 120 volts. That will be 2400 microcoulombs. That is 2400 into 10 power minus 6 coulombs. It is 2.4 into 24 into 10 power minus 4 coulombs. Option C will be the correct answer. In this question, three capacitors are connected in series. You have to find the charge on the 3 microfarad capacitor. So my dear bacha log, 2, 3 and 6, 3 capacitors, mu f and mu f, are connected in series to a 10 volt source. We have to calculate the charge on the 3 microfarad capacitor. Here first of all beta I will calculate the equivalent capacitance. The equivalent capacitance will be 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 6. That will be equal to 3 plus 2 plus 1 by 6. That is 7 by 6. Oh, 6 by 6. Oh my god. Huh. 6 by 6. That is 1 by 1. So C equivalent, my dear bachalo, will just be 1 microfarad. Now, what will be the charge that will be coming out of the battery, my dear bachalo? That will just be C equivalent into V. That will be 1 into 10. That is 10 microcoulombs. Now beta, if the charge coming out of the battery is 10 microcoulomb, that means the charge here and here will be plus minus 10 microcoulomb. Okay, the charge here and here will also be plus minus 10 microcoulomb. The charge here and here will also be plus minus 10 microcoulomb. Because in series, my dear bacha log, the charge on each capacitor remains the same. In series, the charge on each capacitor, my dear bacha log, will be same. So answer will be option B. Here beta, two capacitors of capacities C1 and C2 are connected in series with a potential difference V applied across it. So potential difference applied is V. We have to calculate the potential difference across C1. Beta, the letters are displaced a little bit. C1 will be here, C2 will be here, and this C1 will be here. Okay, letters are displaced a little bit, misprint is there, but we have to calculate the potential difference across C1. So how do we calculate this, my dear bacha log? I will first of all calculate C equivalent. That will be 1 by C1 plus 1 by C2. That beta will give you C equivalent as C1 C2 upon C1 plus C2. Now that will give me, my dear bacha log, the charge coming out of the battery. And since beta they are connected in series, the charge across both of them will be the same. And that charge beta will be given as C equivalent into V. That will be nothing but C1 C2V upon C1 plus C2. Now bacha log, what we also want to calculate is the potential difference V1. Now what will be V1, my dear bacha log? That will just be charge divided by capacitance C1, Q by C1. That will be nothing but C1 C2V upon C1 plus C2 into 1 by C1. C1 will get cancelled out. It will be C2V upon C1 plus C2. Okay, so that will be, my dear bacha log, option C. Option C will be the correct answer. Next, my dear bacho, is this question. Three capacitors are connected to DC source of 100 volts. In the adjoining figure, find the charge accumulated across each plate. Alright, my dear bacha log. So in this case, we have to figure out what will be the charges here. So first of all, I will calculate the equivalent capacitance. Equivalent capacitance, my dear bacha log, will just be 1 by 2 plus 1 by 3 plus 1 by 4. That will be equal to 6 plus 4 plus 3 by 12. That is equal to 15 by 12, which gives me C equivalent is equal to 12 by 15 or 4 by 5. Okay. Very nice. Now, my dear bacha log, what will I say about the e- charge coming out of the battery beta? The charge coming out of the battery will just be C equivalent into V, that will be 4 by 5 into 100, that will just be 80 microcoulombs. Very, very good. Now, bacha log, what you have to understand is that in this case, if I talk about each plates, the F plate, the D plate and the B plate will have positive charges, and all of them, QF, QD and QB, will have a charge of plus 80 microcoulombs. And my dear bacha log, the A plate, C plate and E plate, all of them will have negative charges, and those charges, my dear bacha log, will be minus 80 microcoulombs. The charges are the same beta because they are connected in series. So in this question beta, only option D will be the correct answer. QB, QD and QF are the same, and their value beta will be equal to 80 microcoulombs. Now in this question, my dear bacha log, we have to figure out the relation between V1, V2, V3 and Q1, Q2, Q3. Understand, if the charge here is Q1 beta, that means a charge Q1 came out of the battery and got deposited on the first capacitor. Now that charge beta would have then gotten divided into Q2 and Q3, and therefore on the C2 and C3 capacitor will have charges Q2, Q3. Using Kirchhoff's current law beta, what you should understand is that Q1 here will be equal to Q2 plus Q3, which means beta option A is definitely wrong and option D is also definitely wrong. It's option B or C which will be correct. Next, my dear bacha log, what you should also understand is that because C2 and C3 are connected in parallel beta, their potential difference has to be same. V2 should be equal to V3. Also at the same time, my dear bacha log, this potential difference, which will be V2 or V3, both of them are same, and this potential difference, which will be V1, the sum of both of them should match with the battery potential because they are connected in series to the battery. So I will just say that V is equal to V1 plus V2 or V is equal to V1 plus V3. Both of these statements are correct. So from this beta, we will see that option C is correct and option B is also wrong. I hope you guys understand. In this question, two capacitors C1 and C2 are connected in parallel. Charge Q is given to the assembly and it gets shared. The ratio of charge on capacitor C1 to the charge on capacitor C2 is given by what? Beta, what is happening is that two capacitors C1 and C2 are connected in parallel. Okay, and charge Q is given to them. That charge beta will be divided into Q1 and Q2. Now, since both of them are connected in parallel, they will have the same potential difference. If the potential difference is V here, the potential difference will also be V. Potential difference is same beta in case of parallel connection. So Q1 beta can be written as a C1V and Q2 can be written as C2V. If you take the ratio, it will Q1 by Q2 ratio will just be C1 by C2. So option A will be the correct answer. In this question beta, two capacitors 3 and 6 microfarad are connected in series across a 400 volt battery. we have to calculate the potential difference across each capacitor respectively. So I will connect 3 and 6 microfarads in series to a battery like this, 400 volts. Now, my dear bacha log, in this case, the charge on both capacitors is the same. In series, the charge on each capacitor is same. Now, how will I calculate that charge? First, I will calculate equivalent capacitance, which is going to be 2 microfarads. Then I will calculate the equivalent charge, that will be C equivalent into V, that will be 2 into 400, 800 microcoulombs. Now beta, if I know the potential, if I know the charge on both the capacitors, I can calculate the individual potential differences V1 and V2. V1, my dear bacha log, will just be Q by C1, that will be 800 divided by 3, and V2 will just be Q by C2, that will be 400 divided by 3. So, 800 divided by 6, which is 400 divided by 3. Yeah. So, option A will be the correct answer. Next, my dear bacha log, is this question. Two condensers of capacity C and C by 2 are connected to a V volt battery as shown. Find the total energy stored in the condensers. Now here beta, I think the circuit is incomplete. They should complete the circuit like this. Here, since this C and C by 2 are connected in parallel, I will calculate the equivalent capacitance, that will be C plus C by 2, that will be 3C by 2. And now my dear bacha log, energy stored, the total energy stored will just be equal to half into C equivalent into V square. That will be half into 3C by 2 into V square. That will be 3C by 4V square. Option C will be the correct answer beta. Next is this question. Here beta, I have 2 capacitors and 3 different batteries. We have to calculate a charge on each capacitor. So here I will have to use Kirchhoff's voltage law, my dear bacha log, and we will use this, do not worry. Okay, so what I will do is beta, I will use the traveling method. First I will start here and I go from here to here. What will I do? Nothing, because I have not crossed anything. Then I will go from here to here. What will I do beta? I went from plus to minus, so I will write down minus 4 volts. Then I go from here to here. I will do nothing. Then I will go from here to here. What will I do beta? I went from plus to minus, so I will do subtraction, minus 6. Then I go from here to here. Now beta, what will I do? I went from minus to plus, so I will add. Now for a capacitor, Q is equal to CV. So for a capacitor, V will be Q by C. So here I will add Q by C. Because I went from minus to plus, I have to add according to Kirchhoff's voltage law. Then I go from here to here. What will I do? Again add Q by C. Then this time beta, I will go from here to here. I'm going from minus to plus, so I will add 2. Loop is complete. I will write is equal to 0. Overall beta, I will get Q by 2 plus Q by 2 is equal to 4 plus 6 minus 2. Q will just be equal to 8 coulombs. So option B will be the correct answer.